Jake Paul, the problem child, the YouTube sensation turned knockout machine, turned what, exactly? Over the past few years, Jake Paul has turned heads, broken records, and turned the boxing world upside down. Whether you hate him, love him, or just can't stop watching him, he's been a force of entertainment and unpredictability in the sport. But now, a real question is starting to stir in the minds of fans. Is Jake Paul's boxing actually getting worse? Sit tight, because in this video, we're breaking it all down, fight by fight, technique by technique, opponent by opponent, to figure out if Jake Paul is still on the rise, or if his career is slowly spiraling into decline. Let's rewind for a second. Jake Paul didn't start off as a boxer. He was a content creator, prankster, and internet provocateur. But in 2018, when he stepped into the amateur ring to fight Deji, the younger brother of KSI, everything changed. He got his first taste of the ring, and whether you liked it or not, Jake Paul was hooked. Fast forward to 2020, Jake's pro debut. Jake Paul versus Enes Gibb. Jake came out swinging, literally. He dropped Gibb 3 times in the first round and walked away with a TKO victory. At the time, everyone laughed it off. He beat another YouTuber. People said, big deal. But Jake wasn't stopping there. Enter Nate Robinson. The former NBA star stepped into the ring next and left on a stretcher. Jake flattened him with one of the most brutal knockouts the internet had ever seen. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. People started wondering, wait a minute, is Jake actually kinda good? Then came Ben Askren, a former UFC fighter with world-class grappling skills but famously bad striking. That fight ended in less than 2 minutes. KO. Boom. Lights out. At this point, Jake was 3-0, with all wins by KO. The buzz turned real. But here's the twist, these weren't real boxers. Critics said, let's see him against a striker. And that's when Tyron Woodley came in. Tyron Woodley was no joke. Former UFC welterweight champion, serious knockout power. And for the first time, Jake was tested. The first Woodley fight was close, maybe even a little too close. But Jake edged it out with a split decision win. Then came the rematch, and Jake shut everyone up with a vicious right hook that had Woodley face planting on the canvas. That knockout was probably Jake's peak. The hype was insane. He was being talked about in the same breath as real fighters. He had improved his defense, his composure, and most of all, his timing. But then, something changed. Jake's next opponent? Anderson Silva. Now Silva was 47 years old. Sure, but he's a goat in combat sports. He had just beaten Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a real boxer. Jake stepped into the ring and, surprisingly, looked decent. He dropped Silva in the final round and won by unanimous decision. But for hardcore boxing fans, something felt off. Jake wasn't as explosive. He wasn't pressing the action. He was more hesitant, more cautious. And while he won, it wasn't dominant. It was technical, and not in the good way. Then came the real test. Tommy Fury, a real boxer, undefeated, younger, more experienced in the ring. And when Jake finally fought him in February 2023, we saw what boxing purists had warned about. Jake looked slow, stiff, one-dimensional. He was relying too much on the overhand right. No jab, no combinations. And worse, he got outboxed. Jake Paul lost that fight by split decision. But the truth is, Tommy outclassed him. And suddenly, people started whispering the question, is Jake Paul's boxing getting worse? Let's get technical. Jake Paul's early success came from brute force. He had knockout power, solid athleticism, and most importantly, supreme confidence. But confidence only gets you so far. Over time, you need skills. And the thing is, Jake never really evolved. Watch his early fights, and you'll see it. Wild overhands, leading with power shots, constantly lunging. But it worked because his opponents were either too small, too slow, or too unskilled. But once he started facing real fighters, that same approach started to backfire. Against Tommy Fury, Jake was exposed. Poor footwork. He plods forward without angles. Predictable rhythm. He doesn't feint. He doesn't vary tempo. Limited jab. He throws it occasionally, but it lacks snap. Too reliant on power. He's hunting for the knockout instead of building it. Even against Nate Diaz, a fighter known for his insane chin but sloppy boxing, Jake looked underwhelming. He won, sure, but he didn't dominate. He couldn't stop a 38-year-old MMA fighter who had 0 pro boxing matches. That says something. Now, let's address the big question directly. Is Jake Paul's boxing getting worse? The answer isn't black and white. In some ways, yes. His performances post-Woodley haven't looked nearly as sharp. He's slower. He's more hesitant. He doesn't throw with the same volume. But here's the twist: Jake might not actually be regressing. He's just being exposed. When you go from fighting YouTubers and retired MMA fighters to actual boxers, the truth comes out. Jake didn't get worse. His opponents got better. The illusion of dominance faded the moment real technique entered the chat. The flash is still there, but the fundamentals, they're lacking. And when you're fighting pros, fundamentals win fights. Another angle to consider is Jake's training. He's been working with BJ Flores and Danny Smith, guys who've helped him build a solid foundation. But let's be real, to beat real boxers, he needs more than a foundation. He needs high-level refinement. Guys like Canelo Alvarez or Shakur Stevenson didn't become elite because they had one good coach. They became elite because they lived in the gym. They lived the lifestyle. Jake, he's got distractions. Media, promotions, business, prime, most valuable promotions. The dude's running an empire. But you can't serve two masters. You either go all in on boxing, or you don't. And when you compare Jake's progression to someone like KSI or even Logan Paul, Jake's ahead. But when you compare him to actual boxers, he's far behind. So what does the future hold? Jake's next few moves will tell us everything. If he keeps picking MMA fighters with no hands, then yeah, his career is going to feel like a stale rerun. The spectacle will get old, and fans will move on. But if he steps up, if he truly commits to facing real boxers, fixing his weaknesses, and grinding like a contender, then the story isn't over. He could reinvent himself. Jake is still young, still athletic, still marketable, and most importantly, he's still hungry. But the margin for error is shrinking. He's not the worst. He's not the best. He's somewhere in between, a spectacle caught between fame and real fight game. But make no mistake, the next fight will tell us everything. Is Jake ready to level up, or will the boxing world move on without him? Either way, we'll be watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more breakdowns, highlights, and all the madness from the boxing world. This is Boxing Pulse, and we'll catch you in the next round. Peace.